On this episode, we're focused on the essential leadership skill of clarity. I'm joined by Seth Yelorda, keynote speaker, leadership coach, and founder of Vision Clarity Consulting. Seth brings over a decade of experience transforming leaders and teams, drawing on his unique background in organizational psychology and development. He'll share his powerful Lead with Clarity framework, revealing how ambiguity breeds division and turnover, while intentional clarity unlocks potential, aligns teams, and drives outstanding results. Get ready to cut through the noise and learn how to inspire your team by leading with clarity. Listeners will agree there is great synergy and clarity to these messages and the ideas of setting the temperature in your life and work. Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. We are in season 9 of this podcast. I think there's 260 some episodes by now. So many great things happening out there. So many great people that I've gotten to share and intro into this pod, which you're going to hear from one of those today. But wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast, welcome in. So glad that you are here. If you're somebody who's new to the pod, again, there's 260 some episodes. So jump in, Google my name, Jason Barger, and whatever topic around leadership and culture and mindset and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure you'll find something that hopefully resonates with you. And if you are one of the folks that have been with us from the very beginning of this podcast, so glad this continues to add value to your life, to your work. My commitment, as always, to these conversations is I want this to be a place where you can step back in your own life and your work and to think and to hopefully have a little good oxygen breathed into you so that you can think about that temperature that you are hoping to set in your life and your work. And I'm grateful to get to do this and get to share great people with you. If you'll do this before we start, of course, if you'll do the thing, I keep being told this to every time say this, but if you'll hit 5 stars on the rating of the podcast, if you'll leave an authentic review in your own words, if you share it with anybody, whether that's on social media, your team at work, you say, hey, here's an episode that I think we all listen to and talk about. Those are all the ways in which the podcast spreads and the messages get amplified further in the world. And so thanks to everybody that takes a moment to do that. I am grateful for anybody that does. I am very excited to invite my guest for today into this chat in just a moment. Seth Yelorda is a keynote speaker, leadership coach, and organizational development consultant with over a decade of experience transforming leaders and teams. As the founder of Vision Clarity Consulting, based in Riverside, California, he specializes in helping leaders eliminate ambiguity and develop extraordinary employees through his Lead with Clarity framework. Drawing on his background as a senior pastor and his academic credentials, including an MBA, an MA in organizational psychology, and PhD studies in organizational behavior, Seth bridges theory and practice to deliver actionable strategies that inspire leaders to align teams, resolve conflicts, and achieve strategic goals. He's also a husband and father to 3 girls. Seth and I met, shout out to Impact 11, a community that we're both a part of, speakers, all over the place. And from the very moment that we got to meet, I appreciated his spirit and wanted to share his messages. Especially around clarity, and anybody that's been a listener to this podcast, that when I talk about clarity in my book, Breathing Oxygen, when I talk about in thermostat cultures, what's happening in the world around employees and attracting and retaining all the best people in the world, you're going to see a lot of synergies, I think, to the messages that you'll hear from Seth in just a second. And also, lastly, before I finally, invite him in, I know one of his former employees, Kaiser Permanente, where he did some wonderful work there. I've also done a number of speeches to different leadership groups and stuff. So shout out to all the Kaiser Permanente folks out
Oh,
there in
yeah.
Northern or Southern California. Awesome folks out
Georgia.
there. And Georgia, all over the place. Anybody out there. But welcome to the podcast, Seth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. I am honored to be here. It's crazy how the stars align and you meet people that you never thought you would meet. And then, friendships emerge, collaboration opportunities emerge. And so here we are today. And so, man, I'm just grateful for this moment and for you giving me this opportunity to come and have a conversation with you and have a conversation with your audience.
No, it's awesome, man. I've enjoyed getting to know you and supporting your work and really helping to just amplify good messages in the world. And so it's been fun to get to know you that way. And I know we're still, we've known each other now for a number of months, but still getting to know each other a little bit. So I thought the first question I'm going to ask you is, tell me something I don't know about you, or that certainly the listeners of this podcast might know about Seth. Give me something.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I think about, man, what don't you know about me? Obviously, there's so much because we're getting to know each other. But, my background in working with churches. So I started off as a pastor and I was working with churches for about 15 years. Yeah. And then I transitioned into coaching, speaking, consulting. But along the way, I got married, had a couple of kids. Yeah. And something that was a real transformational experience for me that really shaped me as a leader, it shaped me as a communicator, was my first daughter. Her name is Emily. She was born premature. She was born at 26 weeks. So she was a good, month and a half, longer, right? Early.
Wow.
And, where she was a Kaiser baby, was born at Kaiser, bounced around Southern California. That was my first experience before I started working with them, with Kaiser. And just seeing her growth, her development, she still has some challenges. She's a special needs child. And just recognizing what that now means for my wife and I and her two younger sisters, who also came after her, that has really shaped me as a husband, as a father, as a speaker, as a coach, as a consultant. Just being able to now view the world through the lens of parents and individuals who either themselves have special needs, which we know a lot of individuals do, but then also parents who are trying to raise special needs kids, whether they're on the autism spectrum or they have some type of physical handicap. That has really shaped me and really even giving me more of a motivation to do this work that I'm doing now, right? Because I see in my daughter an 11-year-old now who is trying to thrive in life in spite of some of the challenges that she's had. And I just feel like, man, on so many levels, her journey is everyone's journey. We are all trying to thrive in life, right? Thrive in life, thrive in work. And not all of us have had the same experience, exposure, the same, a head start in life. Some of us had some rough starts. And yet we still have the ability to thrive. And so raising her has been both a joy and a challenge. And it's really shaped a lot of who I am as an individual and I think my contribution to this world. So that's just a little bit about me.
No, that's awesome. And I see, this is why I asked the question, because I didn't even know that. And yet then you start to see the connections that you also have. So my wife, Amy, was in special education for 20 years, working with, over those course of 20 years, multiple different areas of special education. She has one of her sisters with multiple disabilities that she grew up with, and that framed and shaped the way that she sees the world. And certainly now that I've experienced it, and then some of my current clients and or best clients over the years have been in the space of developmental disabilities and helping to shape organizations that are trying to help serve those that are in need and families that are also helping their people thrive. So shout out to all the folks out there that have that see through that lens, but also that are people that are thriving and striving each day to help other people thrive in the world. So I didn't even know we had that connection, and that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, great question. I'm glad I could share for sure.
That's awesome. Well, tell me, we could go on and on about that, and we'll follow up on that because I've got a lot of other questions that you and I will talk about related to that off air. But tell us now, with the time that we have today, tell us more about this idea that you know around extraordinary employees. You know, you talk about that a lot with organizations around, you know, what is an extraordinary employee, and then this leading with clarity framework. Share a little bit with us about those ideas.
Yeah. So when I started really diving into organizational development, working with organizations, healthcare, nonprofit, corporate, government, faith community, I started to see a trend in that the employees that really thrive and exceed expectations, there's really three common characteristics that I saw, that I observed that they have. First is they love their job. Right? They love their job. They love the work. They love the work that they do. It's meaningful. There's alignment. There's congruence between their values and the work they're doing. They feel like they're contributing to society. It's meeting a need for them. They feel fulfilled in their work. You know, and these are individuals like teachers and nurses and government officials and servicemen and women and individuals who, and not just in that realm, but also like factory workers and leaders and administrators, like they actually like what they do, right? And so what I have found is that, number one, this idea of an extraordinary employee is someone who loves their job. Number two, they're good at their job, meaning they're being trained, they're being resourced, they're being developed. They have the competence and the skills to actually do their job really well. And then number three, they love who they do their job with. And if you can create, and that's, as you know, that's a culture piece, right? That's all culture. No doubt. I love who I do my job with. We get along. We have good conversations. It doesn't mean that, you know, you come over to my house for Thanksgiving dinner, but it does mean that I genuinely care about my coworkers, right? And we want to thrive and win together. So I love who I do my job with. And what I realized is that employees that experience those three things, they love their job, they're good at their job, and they love who they do their job with, they really rise above everyone else, and they really become extraordinary. And extraordinary, it's so funny. I was talking to a team of nurses, and I asked them the question: when you think of someone who's extraordinary, who do you think of? And one of them shouted out, Beyonce, right? Like, okay, yes, like obviously Beyonce is extraordinary, right? Yeah. But then I asked them the question: when you look in the mirror, do you see someone looking back at you who is extraordinary? And there was like, maybe, kind of, like, I want to say yes, but I'm not quite sure. And so I really wanted to redefine for them what extraordinary is. Extraordinary isn't you're just some like this Grammy Award winning singer. I mean, yeah, that's extraordinary. But extraordinary is really when you are able to thrive in the midst of ordinary situations. That's how I defined it. You are able to thrive in the midst of the ordinary. You got a special needs kid. You got to sit in traffic on your way to work, right? The rush hour traffic, you know, the situation may not be ideal, but yet in spite of the ordinary stuff that all of us go through, you're able to thrive and operate at your highest self. And so that's how I defined extraordinary for them. And the individuals who are able to do that, it's because I have discovered that they have these three things in common. And that would make them an extraordinary employee. And when you become when you are an extraordinary employee, love your job, you're good at your job, and you love who you do your job with, it really then results in you becoming an ambassador for your organization, right? You want your friends, your family, your neighbors to work at your organization because the leader, right, is creating and cultivating this environment for you to really thrive in the midst of this, in this environment. So long answer to a great question.
I love it. Yeah, I love it, man. And what I would say is that, because I want to make sure nothing gets lost in translation, because the way I hear that too is like, love my job, which doesn't mean that my job is always puppy dogs and ice cream.
Correct.
That loving my job does not mean that there's an absence of struggle, that there's an absence of challenge, that there's an absence of bad days or bad moments. I can love my job and still in the midst of challenge say, I'm grateful for the job I have and that I get to do this job.
Yep.
And then there's also not an absence of performance.
Yep.
is not only do I need to love my job, but the goal is for me, whatever the role might be, is to go do a good job to make sure that my performance matches that love for whatever it is I'm here to do. And hopefully I love the organization. Hopefully I love the mission. Hopefully I love the role that I get to do. But then do I match it with that, use the word congruence, which I love that. I just did a podcast recently about congruence between our words and our actions. And that congruence of, I may love it in theory, but do I follow it up in practice? And do I put it into action? And then do I love the people I do it with, which that's the culture piece. That's the that's the becoming an ambassador for, which I'll circle back to here in a little bit, but an ambassador for that culture that we're trying to create together. And that's that is power. And that's where I think that extraordinary employee, it leads to you retain those kind of people. And you attract those kind of people. Because they want to be there.
Yeah. And I think on some level, if any one of those three are off, then it's going to lead to lower performance. It's going to lead to disengagement. So if I don't find meaning in the work I'm doing, then I might still do it, but I'm not going to do it as readily, as heartily. That's a better word, as heartily as I would if I really find meaning in this work. And it doesn't mean you have to be, on the front line saving lives for your job to be meaningful. No, like meaning, there is not a standard for what meaningful work is. It's really defined by your values, what you find meaningful, and the contribution that you're able to make to this world. And so if the work is meaningful and you love the work you're doing, and you're also good at the work you're doing, right, then that will lead to higher levels of performance, which then has all of these positive outcomes.
No doubt. And in fact, Tamara Miles, for my listeners out there, Tamara Miles and Wes Adams, who have been on this podcast in the past, and certainly, and I'm going to have them on here again soon, but they've done all this research around meaningful work. And really what they find is not surprising to what you're describing is, they study all these places that are supposed to be exemplary and these places that people think of as extraordinary. And really what the research finds from all the employees is that it comes back to the places that do it best and the performance absolutely follows are doing these really key foundational things that help them fall in love with their job and help them have the tools and the support to do their job well, and are really strategic and intentional about connecting them to a culture that is driven by alignment around values, and there's intentionality to how we show up to what we do. So, when I talk about setting a temperature for ourselves as leaders or for a culture of an organization, that's the work of that intentionality. And you're right, the performance metrics follow.
Yeah. It's definitely a lagging indicator, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of like the framework, the lead with clarity framework, is really about how do you as the leader create an environment where you can cultivate extraordinary employees, right? And then a lot of that has to, and also how are you as a leader really creating an inspiring picture of the future? I was talking to a leader 2 weeks ago, and I asked them the question. They told me that they were planning on retiring in the next, 8 to 10 years. And I said, well, when you retire, and this is a healthcare leader, I said, when you retire, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want your legacy to be? What is that thing that you want to, make sure if you could do nothing else, you did this one thing? And he started to describe to me how he wanted to build another hospital and expand their territory and just do a great work and, provide services to the community. And as he was painting this picture, I was like, I wonder if he has any open jobs here. Like, I would love to work for him. Like like the picture he was painting was so inspiring that I literally sat there and was like, man, I would love to work for him. Right. And that is the power of leading with clarity, where you as the leader are painting a compelling picture of the future that your employees are like, I want to be a part of that. I want to go there with you. And the picture that you're painting, it also aligns with their own individual aspirations, right? It's not just like, hey, come help me and you serve me, but it's also that leader having a keen awareness of what are you, employee? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What do you want to accomplish? What gets you up in the morning? What are your bucket list items? And is there any way that I can connect who you are to where we're going? Right.
Yep.
So that there is alignment between the two. So that's what this whole idea of leading with clarity is.
I love it. When you first started describing this, we were sitting next to each other in Detroit, hanging out, and you were started to explain this. The image that I had, which is comes from my book, Breathing Oxygen, where I have a whole chapter of talking about this clarity and how when there's an absence of clarity, it gets harder to breathe. And yet when there is clarity, it seems like you can breathe better and everybody around you can breathe better, and you're able to go further because you can see that image. And so I share stories from some teams and organizations and folks where that clarity was there. But it really is this, from whatever role you play in the organization, do you have a sight lines to where it is that we're trying to go, and that it's compelling? And can you see that not just do I want to go there, but I want to go on the journey because it fits with what I want to be about and where I want to go too. So I love that. So the counter question to that is, of course, so what gets in the way? Like, I think every leader and every team and every organization says, well, yeah, we want extraordinary employees. And certainly every organization that I've been with, they understand that, hey, we got to be clear, and expectations got to be clear, and our vision's got to be clear, and we got to have clarity. And yet it's so interesting that we all know these things, and yet how easy it is for things to get foggy.
Yeah.
And so what gets in the way of us creating, in your opinion or your observation, what gets in the way of us creating extraordinary employees, or when we start to experience that kind of fogginess rather than the clarity?
Yeah.
What's getting in the way?
First thing is lack of time. What I've experienced is that leaders feel like they don't have the time for strategic clarity, strategic vision. They don't have I don't have time to develop my team. I don't have time to have one-on-one conversations and to really get to know them, right? That the leader feels pressure from either, other stakeholders, shareholders, the board, the community. Like, there's pressure that I don't have time. And so as leader, you have to be the owner of your calendar. I tell people, you have to time block on your calendar time for vision. I'm just going to sit and just think about where are we going, right? I'm going to give myself 2 hours a week, an hour a week, right? 30 minutes a week. Like, you have to set aside time where you are not responding and reacting to the events that are happening around you, but you're just dreaming. And that time needs to be time of silence, time of solitude, where you're just like, let me just think about the future. Where are we going? So what I have found is that the leaders who are constantly bombarded with deadlines and requests and obligations and responsibilities and fighting fires all the time, that Eisenhower matrix, doing the urgent, that you don't have time to do the important thing of visioning, right? And then if you don't take the time, what inevitably then happens is you come up with multiple visions, because your vision now is just a reaction to, oh, the stock market, this happened, so we got to do this. Oh, we got a new competitor who just moved into our city. Oh, now we got to do this. And you're just reacting. And so you're coming up with multiple visions. It's sending a lot of confusion and mixed messages down to your team. Like, you use the word fogginess down to your team, because, well, last week you said this, and last month you said that, and now we're doing this, and how does this fit here, and how does that fit there? And anytime you have multiple visions, that leads to division.
Yeah.
And if you have division on your team, that leads to divorce, i.e. turnover. People leave, right? Your best people leave, and the organization will not be able to truly accomplish its highest level of work. Right. And so as a leader, you have to take time.
I love that. And what I'm hearing in what you say, which, again, listeners of this podcast, their ears are going to perk up because they've heard me talk about the Eisenhower matrix. They've heard me talk about this idea of busyness versus effectiveness, and how we've been tricked oftentimes as leaders, but also entire teams and organizations, into equating activity, busyness with effectiveness. And so it's this illusion really of what I'm hearing you talk about is the illusions of that I don't have time. And again, that doesn't mean like we all have a lot of obligations. And certainly as you elevate into roles of leadership, you're going to have requests, you're going to have deadlines, you're going to have pressures on you. But it's the buying into this, I can't take the time for to seek the clarity. I just have to be in that, what I would call thermometer thinking, which is that purely reactionary kind of thinking, rather than taking the time that I need to go have that one-on-one. We need to have that team conversation.
Yep.
I need to personally take that time to make sure that the vision is clear for me so that I can proactively share that vision and erase any of that fogginess. But if I don't do it, then the illusion that I don't have time takes higher priority than actually prioritizing the vision.
Yep. That's it, 100%.
But let's take a break. Let's pause for a second, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon.
That's it, 100%. There's certain things as a leader that you can delegate and that you should delegate. Taking the time to think about the future is not one of them.
Yeah.
Right. Taking the time to think about your business from a strategic perspective is not one of them. Yeah. I'm sure most leaders have team meetings where we get together and we say, okay, what are we working on this week, this month, this quarter? Right. And so that's a part of it. But even before that team meeting, it's that leader needs to have their own clarity session where they now are walking into that meeting with clarity as far as, okay, here's our strategic priorities. This is what it looks like. This is how we're going to structure. If there's any type of role ambiguity or there's silo departments, having that time to think clearly as far as how do we need to structure ourselves. Like you just have to. You will not be able to function at your highest level if you don't take the time. Right.
Yeah. And again, I think sometimes we often think about it only in terms of our teams and our organizations. And sometimes, I'm not a very bright guy. Sometimes I got to break it down into smaller, thoughts. And the fact that I have to think about it just as my own personal life. And again, as a husband, for me to think that if we don't ever take time to connect and get clear on where are we trying to go, then why are we surprised when we don't get there?
Yeah.
And if, me as a father, and so we talk about this kind of strategic thinking and planning oftentimes in our teams and organizations, and we don't always do it well there. And yet also this relates to how do I want to show up, and is it clear as the type of person I'm hoping to be as a husband, as a father for those 3 girls that you have, what is that? And then what am I going to do in congruency to bring action and behavior to that vision? Sometimes we just don't even take the time to get clear on it.
Yeah. And some may feel like, they don't have time to take the time. And I love how you said it. It's the illusion that you don't have the time. I was watching a podcast. It wasn't a podcast. It was a documentary on Bill Gates. And it was just talking about some of the things that he does and how he takes he has these 2-3 week long retreats into a cabin, and he just takes
Think weeks. He calls them think weeks. Yep.
Right. And I know that there's a leader watching this, listening to this podcast right now who says, well, it's easy for him. He's Bill Gates. And I would say he's Bill Gates because he takes the time.
Yep.
Right. Like he has accomplished what he's accomplished is because he takes the time. And for you and for me, it's not, well, when we get the time, we'll take it. It's no, we have to take the time. And then that time, which is a leading indicator, it will then produce the thing that will give us more time. Right. But we have to prioritize it.
There's a whole chapter again in my book on breathing oxygen that's about this idea of the power of rest and our intentionality around what it is that we're trying to do. And I cite examples like the Gates and others that, and I talk about the practices that I do to none of us are perfect or nobody has it all figured out, but our effectiveness is absolutely tied to our ability to be clear on, well, what is it we're trying to do?
Yep.
And when we don't take the time, which again, I've had plenty of leaders and folks challenge me that, I can't possibly do that. And then what's a fun exercise is say, all right, well, hold on. If we really took an audit, all of us, of how we invest our time, the results would come back, and we would quickly realize that there are some things that we could cut out. There are some things we could do differently. And yet what we also don't want to do is take the time to audit that because we're not sure what we'd find,
Yeah. I did an exercise this last couple of weeks where I did that audit. I had an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. And every 15 minutes, I wrote down, what did I do the last 15 minutes on an Excel spreadsheet? And I gave each item a dollar figure. So it was like checking email. That's like a $1 sign. If it's like coaching someone, that's $3 signs. Right. And so I said, is this a $200 task? Is this a $2,000 task? Or is this a $20,000 task? Right. And so I did an audit, and it was just amazing to me when you look back, you say, man, I spent the majority of my day doing $25 tasks. Right. Which those are the things I need to be delegating to other people. And then I need to be giving more time to those $200 tasks, $2,000 tasks, $20,000 tasks. And part of visioning and taking time and clearing out the cobwebs and just having those moments of clarity, I would argue those are $20,000 tasks that you need to lock in on your calendar, because the fruit of that time will be endless. It'll just continue to produce a harvest for you.
What you're describing is, I would believe, in the Eisenhower matrix, again, would be the bottom right-hand quadrant of the Eisenhower matrix. It's the important but not urgent. You don't often solve the $20,000, question or challenge or whatever it is in one jump. It's a further down the road thing. But if we don't ever carve out time and invest it in that discovery, that clarity, the longer term work, then we won't ever get there. We'll stay trapped in that other part of the quadrant, which are those tasks that are seemingly urgent, but really, when we step back and look at them, are not all that important.
Yeah.
And we can 100%. Spend all of our time and energy spinning our wheels in that bucket.
Yeah. I like to encourage people that my experience has taught me that clarity is a function of time. And the one way I show that is I have gotten my best ideas in the shower.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not on my device. I'm not checking email. I mean, hopefully we're not taking our phones into the shower, right? Yeah. It's just, a warm environment where I'm in there for, as quick as 5 minutes to sometimes as long as 30 minutes. And I'm just in there, and it's that solitude. It's that moment where my mind can just think, right? That I'll get, oh man, maybe I should do this, or let me try this, or we haven't considered that. And then I come out and write down my ideas. And so I think that is something that's just a small way to illustrate that when you as a leader, when you set aside the time, it will it will move you further faster.
Yeah, I just was talking to my friend James Clear, who's been on this podcast before, with who wrote Atomic Habits and all of that. And we were talking about the difference between stored time and wasted time. And there are some things that we look back at when we do that audit of, well, how did we invest our time? There are some things we say, man, I kind of wasted time. Because it falls into that it's not urgent and it's not important.
Yeah.
And yet I'm just, which again, we're all human. We sometimes we just need something brainless to do, but we can also just spend too much time in that. And then the difference between carving out time and being in this space where I'm not wasting time, I'm actually storing time. I'm leaving room for my mind to wander, to ask those questions, to get to that next question. And in that process of storing time, it's stored up so that the next time I continue to build upon it.
That's good.
And it leads to something else. And so I think this, all of us are imperfect. We all struggle with this. But I think the point is the best leaders, teams, and organizations on the planet, the best parents and friends and just human contributors are ones that they don't have all the answers, but they do take time and invest time in seeking that kind of clarity.
Yep.
And then their actions become better. Their performance becomes better based on the fact that they took the time to ask the question or go seek that clarity.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. That's good.
That's good, man.
Good.
Buddy, this is awesome. And I love getting to share your thoughts. I love that. Say the division piece again. I want to circle back to that. The absent. I want to say that phrase again, because I think
so if you have multiple visions, that leads to division.
Yeah. Love it.
And division leads to divorce.
I love it.
And I was talking to a friend who's a therapist, and he and I were having a conversation just Saturday, and he said, and as we were talking about that same idea, we just realized, you know what, even the tightest of marriages sometimes end when a competing vision is introduced.
For sure.
Right. And we've all seen that. We have friends, maybe we've been through that, right? Where marriages have dissolved, friendships. Maybe you grew up with someone and you all were thick as thieves. And then two visions were introduced into
businesses that break up because of just differing visions, for sure.
Right. And so as a leader, we really have to do everything in our power and our ability to make sure that there is one vision, and that the vision isn't just in my mind, but that I have communicated it and cascaded it down, that it's shared, and that there is that level of clarity permeates all the way through the organization.
Yeah. And if we are two founding partners of a company or whatever analogy you want, and ultimately we get to the end of the road and we just have separate visions for where it is that we want to go with this, eventually it's okay to say, all right, well, we need to take these separate visions and go separate ways. But inside the walls of this place, we've got to have an aligned vision for where we're going. And if we're not in alignment, then we got to do something else.
Yeah, that's it. 100%. And Peter Sheehan says it like this. He says, it starts with clarity, and then you need agreement around that clarity, and then you need alignment around that agreement. Right. Yep. And so we lead with clarity, but clarity needs to result in agreement. And then that agreement needs to result in alignment, which I think is a great way of thinking about it as well.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, buddy, I could do this all day. I'm super excited about everything that you're doing. And I love how all the messages, certainly there's such great synergy to all the stuff that I'm lucky to get to do with teams and organizations and in this development of people and development of culture. So thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you. I want everybody to know that you can find more, SethYelorda.com. You can find out more about Seth. I'm going to put that in the show notes and all that, so you can search. Anybody listening to this, you'll be able to find that. But I hope you'll check him out. And I'll just say, Seth, again, thanks for coming on and sharing some words.
Thank you. I was honored, and we got to do it again. We got to do it again sometime. We'll love that.
There should be a part 2, buddy. We'll we got plenty more to talk about. So we'll make sure to have that happen. So thanks to everybody out there that's listened today. I hope this gave you some great stuff to think about. I know it certainly made me think. It helps me kind of step back and to breathe a little good oxygen into me and to think about my own life and to think about what is the temperature that I'm trying to set in my life as a husband, as a father, as a friend, and certainly with the teams and organizations that I support and I serve. And I know that I'm going to be thinking about the way Seth described an extraordinary employee. And do I love what I do? And do you love what you do? And do you fall in love with then the craft of how do I get good at what I do? And then the culture element of that. Can I collaborate and work well with other people? And are we aligned in that, the clarity of where it is that we're trying to go and the vision for what we're trying to create in the future? And from that, our performance will follow. So I thank Seth. I thank anybody that's out there listening. And I'll just remind you that the future of leadership, the future of cultures, the future of organizations, it belongs to you, to me, to us. We are the ambassadors for the culture that we want to create. And we are the ones that get to align ourselves around that temperature that we're aiming to set together. So I'll just remind you to step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.